Say what?
You can say hello.
Hey, Mike, how are you? This is brought to you in living color on NBC.
Mike, so sorry about all this. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye, Mike.
You're a nice guy. Just one? Just one.
That was all done. That was all done. I didn't. Well, I decided I wasn't.
I haven't been for 6 months.
And they quit out yesterday.
Yeah.
Well, that's what it was. It was pretty nice. Travel and
No, for sure. His wife is. His wife
Ladies and gentlemen, could I ask everybody to please keep your comments brief? The cemetery needs us to arrive at a certain
Janice, your
time.
friend, Janice.
Please pass through as quickly as possible.
I'll follow you.
Wherever you want to go.
Sure.
I'm a Paul.
Okay. Well, let's see here.
I can still call you.
Okay, definitely.
But that's a shame.
Yeah, okay. Why don't you stay? I could probably get out there.
You go this way. There's all those meetings with the men holding their wives.
got it. Miss.
This one looks, oh, shoot. That doesn't bother me.
Okay, I'll get my things. Yeah.
Not like it's close, but we should try to get together. I think you're going to take the same age.
You have the same.
Up last night at 3 a.m. Oh, wow. That's a great deal. But you pay for it. They can go out and do it. Just close by. I live in It's not that close. Where would we get something that would take like
Ladies and gentlemen, can I ask everyone to please take your seats? Can I also ask everybody to please turn your cell phones to silent? It's never a good feeling to have your phone go off during the service and not be able to find it. Thank you all for attending this beautiful facility. My father's funeral here was 2 months ago, and I just want to say, Matthew, I know the pain you're feeling. I was sitting exactly in the seat you were 2 months ago. I'd like to, officiating the funeral will be Rabbi Stephen Stephen Hara.
We remember Herbert Erlbach and join our hearts together to give comfort and strength to his family. Mourning is a time filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, linking Herb's life with the millennia-old tradition of the people Israel and the eternity of God. Herb was born in Chicago, August 15, 1950, to Salo and Ilsa Erlbach. He has one sister, Carol. Herb went to Owen High School. He went on to Northern Illinois University, Roosevelt University, and Northeastern Illinois University, where he earned his bachelor's degree. Herb and Arlene met through a mutual friend and was married on November 27, 1977. They have one son, Matthew, and his partner, Devin. He worked at AXA Equitable as Regional Director of Technology in Northbrook, Oak Brook, and Chicago, and later at Computer Systems Institute, where he was an instructor. He was loved by his students, staff, and colleagues. Herb was named Instructor of the Year at CSI. His passion, dedication, and commitment to teaching shined through our discussions. He loved inviting guest speakers to his classes, for which I was one of them. Herb was also a speaker at graduation. Herb and I met through our wives, Marla and Arlene, who taught together. We became close friends. Even though Herb was not into sports, he engaged in conversations with our friends and even went to a Cubs and Bulls game so that he could be with the guys. He always looked for the good and kind qualities in people. He not only took pride in his work, he took pride in everything Arlene and Matthew and Devin did. He was excellent in grammar, punctuation, and spelling. He typed Arlene's lesson plans and some of the books that she had published. Herb supported her in her baking contests, such as the Pillsbury Bake Off and other contests. He ate some of Arlene's recipes even before taking the required pictures. Herb loved theater. He and Arlene went to Steppenwolf multiple times to see the play Doppelganger, a play which Matthew wrote. Herb also loved going to New York to see Matthew's work as an actor and playwright. He was so proud of Matthew's achievements and successes. Herb also loved seeing Devin in person and watching him on TV. Herb and Arlene took road trips. He loved going to Wisconsin. They took a train from Glenview to West Virginia and went to the exclusive resort, the Greenbrier. Herb loved food. They went to Sonoma, California, where a celebrity chef served a special fried chicken every other Monday, and he and Arlene made sure they went on that week. He loved animals. Herb and Arlene had dogs and cats. He loved his dogs so much that Arlene said they were his girlfriends. I never knew he had dogs, but since knowing him, he loved his cats. Herb enjoyed spending New Year's with their friends, the Arnolds, the Levins, and the O'Connors. Now we will hear from Karen Arnold Hammond, followed by Richard Janis, Bob Johnson, and Matthew.
Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Karen Arnold Hammond. I met Herb and Arlene when Herb was still called Herbie. I was still Karen Fox, and I had started dating Steve Arnold, Herb's very dear friend. That was 45 years ago. We were very young, very silly, and even a bit obnoxious. Since then, Herb and Arlene, and I'm going to talk about Arlene too because they were both my dear friends, and they're a unit. And Herb and Arlene have become an integral and important part of my life. In fact, I was proclaimed their CCC, Certified Colonoscopy Companion, for my many years of driving both Herb and Arlene to and from colonoscopies. Over the years, we added numerous other procedures and a few adjectives to the title. At one point, I was the crazy, compassionate colonoscopy, kidney, and cardiac companion. Herb even created a certificate for me, which I have lost. I would have brought it today. There were several memories which received 2 thumbs up from Matthew and Arlene when we spoke at the end of last week. I'd like to share a couple of those with you. New Year's Eve was synonymous with Herb and Arlene. From 1979 through 2015, we spent every New Year's Eve together. At first, it was just the four of us with several other couples. We would try different restaurants and then come back to our house for a homemade chocolate dessert. One year, I made a French dessert called crotte au chocolat, which literally means chocolate balls of doggy doo-doo. They didn't turn out great, and Herb and Arlene teased me relentlessly. Along came Matthew and my son Paul, who is now so embarrassed that he's probably likes to leave. He would like to leave the auditorium. We started doing New Year's Eve with the boys, and we added another family, the O'Connors. While the adults were eating, Matthew, Paul, and Megan O'Connor would play in the basement. They produced plays, which they then presented to the adults. The plays were entertaining, but we all had such a good time just being together. And I will say, one year I gave the kids cans of silly string. It took days to clean it up, and there are still blue silly string stains in our basement. Another fond memory of Herb and Arlene is Friday date night. We ate at Baker's Square every Friday night for years. We always laughed throughout the entire dinner, telling jokes and just being silly. After Steve passed away in 2010, Herb, Arlene, and I were the Friday night threesome. They were a constant for me during some very turbulent times in my life. Herb and Steve met at Northern Illinois University. Herb's roommate was Rich Erlbach. Rich and Steve became friends, and the three guys hung out together. They were infamous for creating dirty ditties. One night, we were out with Herb and Arlene driving in the car, and Steve and Herb broke out into song. Trust me, they weren't singing Frank Sinatra. They were regaling us with their dirty ditties. Arlene and I were in tears with laughter. Do you remember that? Yes, I do. Herb had a great capacity to love. He loved Arlene and Matthew and Devin unconditionally and was so proud of their many accomplishments. He never hesitated to tell me that he loved me. I will miss his love, his laughter, his silliness, and his presence in my life.
God for rails. It's highly unlikely that someone like me, who attended Sacred Heart of Jesus Polish Catholic School, would meet up and befriend, more than befriend, a Jewish boy from Chicago. And it was all because of my wife, Jane, and Arlene. Arlene happened to live a few doors away from Jane's grandmother. They met at the age of 5. They attended Shaker Heights High School, Kent State University, and ironically, both couples decided to get married in 1977, 2 days apart. It was really since 1977 that I get to meet Herb and learn about him as an individual. As it was mentioned before, he was an educator. He would give people a second chance. And he was considerate and thoughtful, and most of all, he was non-condescending to those individuals, and that counts. Through the years, Herbert, Arlene, and Jane and I just enjoyed each other's company, even though we were still in Cleveland. He never ceased to amaze me with finding a new restaurant for us to attend. And it wasn't the fancy restaurants we went to. It was the ones with slow service, so we could sit and chat, and chat, and chat, and reminisce about Matthew, his bar mitzvah, his plays, and just what was going on with our children who had religious milestones, and Matthew's plays. Matthew's plays probably took up more of the conversation in the important, I mean, it was just constant. So we didn't mind the slow service. One particular, wasn't a restaurant. Herb wanted to show us what an old Chicago ice cream parlor was like. And it was great, except it took 45 minutes to get there. And on the way back, I'm thinking, this is a 90-minute round trip for a vanilla ice cream cone. And I just didn't quite fathom it, but it was good company. Herb always complained that he could never lose weight because of Arlene's and entering all these contests. And Herb was a critic and a taster, not necessarily in that order. He would always say, well, why don't we change the temperature 5 degrees? And he would taste it. He would say, well, why don't we add nutmeg to the recipe and taste it? He would say, why don't we change the baking sheet and taste it? And that was the issue. He would always taste everything, and he enjoyed it. I think specifically the reason he wanted to change the recipes is so he could just taste and taste and taste. I think we're all saddened by Herb's passing, but I think we should also be thankful for having been touched by such an amazing individual, our friend, Herbert Erlbach.
Well, when you're the fourth speaker, you realize that 3 people ahead of you have stolen your information. So let's just pretend that this is another production of Doppelganger with a new director and move forward. 27 years ago, I was teaching a new class in Niles West High School. It was a pilot program combining theater and English and social studies. And it was designed for exceptional creative freshmen as they entered high school. The first day of class, I watched these 20 fresh, young, quite interested young teenagers walk into our classroom. This was supposed to be my creative finale at Niles West. As these 20 young people arrived, the seating choice was sort of directed by this kid dressed in black, who wore strands of chains around his waist. He sat on the front row, legs outstretched, so no one dare walk past him in either direction. We hooked eyes for the longest 10 minutes of my life. I saw in those eyes a deep challenge that I interpreted as, go ahead and try to teach me something. Well, I looked back in his eyes, and I was sure I was indicating to him, I know exactly who you are and what you are. And well, I did. Boy, so I thought. About a week later, we met the parents. Same room, same seats, but just a bit less tension. In the front row sat a very dapper, beautifully dressed man who obviously was a successful business person. Privileged home life, well-structured, probably 2 or 3 kids. Maybe I taught one of them before. But strangely, he had brought a series of framed and unframed artistic pieces. He had a notebook that he was thumbing through. Well, each parent introduced themselves and who the kid was that they had parented. He came to this gentleman. My name is Herbert Erlbach. Matthew Lee is my son. Okay, it took a second. And then suddenly I recognized, and in my mind, you're the Chains gang? This kid belongs to you? After minutes of trying to assimilate everything, he was well into describing his son. He showed each painting and remarkably good and certainly interesting paintings. Read some pieces of both prose and poetry Matthew had written, and described his son as the most important son ever. Then suddenly, after all of this began to settle in, I realized that he is sitting in the exact same seat his son has every day, front row, center. And let it begin. Over the next weeks, I saw this young man really take control of many situations in the classroom, and I became fascinated. Perhaps Arlene was with Herb at that first meeting. I don't remember. If she was, she didn't say much. But there never was just a Herb or just an Arlene. It was Herb and Arlene, or Arlene and Herb, so she probably was there. But at the first open house for the school, I remember Arlene well. She told many, many stories about Matthew growing up. I'm sure you've heard them many times. Minute stories about these strange little things that we knew this boy had capabilities of doing. Stories that concluded his very early childhood to the day that we were sharing thoughts together and how really unique he is. She didn't like the chains. Sifted together, I learned this was an exceptional family. I learned that Arlene was an author of children's stories. Well, she and I, and of course Herb by our side every minute, wrote and produced a children's play called Teddy Bears and Company, and we produced it for our children's theater at Niles West. You can guess who the lead was. Well, I then retired in 2000, just 2 years after I had gotten to know the Erlbachs. My great regret was that I was unable to have 2 more years with Matthew. But the chains were gone after freshman year. Shortly after I retired, Hector and I moved to Santa Fe. But mainly through Herb, we stayed in touch with the Erlbachs. Matthew graduated from Niles West and went to college. And as you would suspect, Matthew created a roller coaster of 4 years of adventure. And he wanted to do absolutely everything, and he started at that point and is still now doing it. Herb detailed weekly about Matthew's progress and successes, and our friendships grew stronger. We are told to love another person is to see the face of God. Herb's very special love of his life, of course, was Arlene. This is a relationship that is written about in the greatest of stories. Arlene had an extraordinary success as a teacher, an author, and she is, as you've heard today, an award-winning chef. And Herb was able to chronicle all of her winnings and her baking on media so we could all share a part of it. Herb was a genius with technology. He was leader at Axe Industries, as you've heard. He changed professions and went to his alma mater, Northern Illinois University, where it seemed he began reinventing himself. His real purpose, he felt, was to teach, which he was able to do at NIU. Then he settled into CSI, where his real talents were really realized. He went far beyond discipline and boundaries to be at one with his students. He was peaceful in his relationships with each person he knew. He was loved, and he returned that love with each person. And that is the strength of his legacy. I simply listened to Herb talk about the inspirational people in his life. Always he found the introspection in everyone. He was respectful and peaceful in his relationships. And in the past several years, he was able to teach, which he found was exactly what his work with his students collectively and individually meant. Each of us here, and each person with whom Herb had contact, has been given by Herb that strength to understand gentle communication in the human condition and the force to continue it in every way for us. But of all God's miracles, large and small, the most miraculous one of all is that God has given us Herb forever. Good night, Prince. May flights of angels take thee to thy rest.
After my soccer games at Warren Park, my dad and I would go to the IHOP on Lincoln. I'd order the Silver 5, and we'd play a game. He'd give me these crazy words to spell, and then tell me what they meant. Words no 8-year-old should be using. It was one of the first gifts he gave me, words. Today there are no words sufficient to fill this terminally endless crater that has erupted in our lives. But I will try my best. Thank you all for being here today. I can hear my dad right now saying, "Wow, Matthew, from all over the country, this is, I don't even know what to say, it's incredible." It is, and not surprising at all. Over the course of the last few days, people keep remarking about how proud my dad was of me, but I want to say how proud I was of my dad. My dad was the son of German Holocaust survivors, Herbert Erlbach, who went deaf at the age of 2 and survived Buchenwald, and my grandmother, Ilse Blaut, who was disabled by polio and smuggled out of Germany to the United States. He grew up with his sister, my Aunt Carol, in a very humble, bilingual, working-class household on the south side of Chicago. And if you were from the south side of Chicago, he'd talk to you all about it. Just ask his friend Tony Cook. And from those very humble beginnings, a battle with epilepsy and later kidney cancer, my dad met my incredible mother, Arlene. And the two built a life he was endlessly proud of. filled with many a Siamese cat and collie throughout the years. Scratchy, Charlie, Robbie, Dusty, Sparky, Frisky, Lucky, Henry, Sherry, Tammy, and Richard. But Richard only lasted a few days. My dad was a fighter, reinventing himself in the face of adversity multiple times in his life and career, and every time with a ruthless optimism. He was a true optimist and an effusive, passionate man who loved to laugh, tell bad jokes, give unsolicited advice and expertise, and connect with everyone he could. Your last name sounds Urdu, Shukran or Shukriya? And then he'd talk about the music or language or food or culture from wherever part of the world that person was from. He loved culture. He loved the world. He loved people. Seeing people, making them feel loved, celebrating them, drawing the best out of them. That was his superpower. Now, this didn't always go so well. A common occurrence growing up went something like this. We'd be on vacation and he'd find out our server had a kid. How old? You know, my wife's an author. To which my mom would respond, Herbie, stop it, you're embarrassing me. To which he'd respond, Arlene, I'm proud of you. You don't like it? Too bad. Then he'd run out to the car, open the trunk, grab one of my mom's recently published books, have her sign it, give it to the server or whomever. Then we'd get in the car and my parents would get in a very loving spat about it. Rinse and repeat. I loved every second of it. He was her biggest cheerleader, and he was certainly my biggest champion. Sometimes also too much. Dad, I love you, but please take that post down. Dad, that one too. Dad, you posted the same article 3 times. Sorry, I'm just so damn proud of you. He was a man in awe of the theater. We went to see a friend of mine in Pippin on Broadway. It was this real acrobatic circus of a production. Throughout the whole thing, he would just turn to me and go, wow, Matthew, that's incredible, wow. It got to a point where I had to go, I know, it's great, we paid $200 a ticket, so stop looking at me. Of course, he was just in awe, and he wanted to share that awe. He loved the magic of theater. My dad was a family man and adored Devin, and he loved to spend Thanksgiving or Christmas with Devin's family. God, Matthew, it feels so good to have this kind of family. There's nothing more important. My dad was a very smart and witty man, and also minced no words when he was pissed off. He had the kind of heart that is expected for someone who felt so big about doing what was right, about injustice, about his beautiful garden, about staining his wooden fence in our backyard with our dog laying in the grass and telling my mom, what a life, Arlie. We did good. In these most recent days, he wanted me to tell him about a movie I had just sold. As I started talking about the opening image, I had to push down this volcano of tears in my gut as I realized I was describing something to him he'd never get to see. Then, when I started to explain it, he said, excuse me, I'm sorry for interrupting, but you may want to do some more research. He liked giving notes. He'd continue, you always said you wanted me to be frank with you. I never said that. But I always appreciated it. He was my greatest encourager, and he gave me everything he could, and what he couldn't or didn't think was right to give me, he taught me to work hard for what I wanted and to earn it. And then when he saw that I worked too hard, he told me to be careful, not to miss out on life. Life's too short, he'd say. I could not agree more. What I'll miss most of all are the random text messages, the voicemails, cooking Thanksgiving and him coming up to me, giving me a kiss on the cheek and saying, just wanted to say I love you, kiddo. I love you too, Dad. Well, I love you more. How could you not be proud of a man with a heart so big it was uncontainable? My dad is very much here in this room, and when we leave it, he will still be here with us. I am devastated by his absence. As a friend recently wrote to me, what can one say when the ocean disappears? There are no words. But if this space today is any indication, maybe it would just be something my dad would say. Wow.
Adonai roi lo exar in od deshe yarkutseni al me menucho in achaleni nafshi shovev Yachni b'maglei tzedek leman shemo. Gam ki eleh b'ni samavet lo irara. Ki ata amadi shiftecha u'mishtakanecha ha'mayin hamuni. Adonai roi lo exar. Adonai lo exar. And now please turn to Psalm 23 in your pamphlet, and we'll read the English together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Okay. Please rise if you can for the memorial prayer. El Mele Rahami, Shofein Amroni, Ansei Minuban Yefona, Kate Kanfe, Tashkina, In Kiddoshin Ukori, Mizkan Kariya, Alayis Hari, Et Ishmat, Yosef Ben Shlomo, Shalach Be'alamo, Beats roar, Hayim, et Nishkano. Adonai hu, not leto, and pot, Shalom al Mishkano, no mar. Amen. You may be seated.
The interment is going to take place at Ridgewood Cemetery. This is in Des Plaines. We will be forming a funeral procession on Big Tree Lane. We will be handing out stickers and or flags. We'll place them on your car. Please drive with your high beam headlights on and your flashers. Please drive defensively, although you're allowed to go through a red light if it's changed. Do not assume that the cars that are coming from another direction are going to stop, so please drive defensively. After the interment, the family is going to be going to Max and Benny's restaurant in Northbrook. That information's on the bottom of your service folder on page 3. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers: Tony Copeland, Karen Arnold Hammond. Thank you. By the way, I was a waiter at Poppin' Fresh. Baker Square, was that you that was talking about it? Yeah, that was about 45 years ago. Hector Cruz, Devin Kowalka, Dr. Arnie Herbstman, Diane Reed, Larry Brown, and Clem Goldad. At this time, if everybody would please rise, and if I could ask the pallbearers to please come forward.
Casket, we're going to place it inside of the earth. Please lift all at once. Proceed forward. Okay. Go, go. Sure, keep it up. If you actually set it down slightly, at the cemetery, please come back up. We're going to be lining up on the road facing east, so you can whatever you choose. So, if you can come back, this will help us.
Okay, we need to go in procession. So we need to